everlasting arms.
Our fellowship, what a joy divine, leaning on the everlasting arms. What a blessedness, what a peace is mine, leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning, leaning, safe and secure from all alarms. Leaning, leaning, leaning on the everlasting arms. Oh, how sweet to walk in this pilgrim way, leaning on the everlasting arms. Oh, how bright the path grows from day to day, leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning, leaning, safe and secure from all alarms. Leaning, leaning, leaning on the everlasting arms. What am I to dread? What am I to fear? Leaning on the everlasting arms. I have blessed peace with my thoughts so near. Leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning, leaning, safe and secure from all alarms. Leaning, leaning, leaning on the everlasting arms. Just when I need Him, Jesus is near. Just when I falter, just when I fear, ready to help me, ready to cheer. Just when I need Him most. Just when I need Him most. Just when I need Him most. Jesus is near to comfort and cheer. Just when I need Him most. Just when I need Him, Jesus is true. Never forsaking all the way through. Giving for burdens, pleasures anew. Just when I need Him most. Just when I need Him most. Just when I need Him most. Jesus is near to comfort and cheer. Just when I need Him most. Just when I need Him, Jesus is strong, bearing my burdens all the day long. For all my sorrows, giving a song. Just when I need Him most. Just when I need Him most. Just when I need Him most. Jesus is near to comfort and cheer. Just when I need Him most. Just when I need Him, He is my own. Answering when upon my call. Tenderly watching, lest I should fall. Just when I need Him most. Just when I need Him most. Just when I need Him most. Jesus is near to comfort and cheer. Just when I need Him most.
Now as we go into our prayer time, I'm sure you all realized how much we need Jesus, and right now, we need him the most.
As we have prayer this morning. Dear Lord, what a honor and privilege we have this morning to meet here today on your Sabbath day to worship you, Lord. Please be with us in everything that we do this morning. Help it to be a reflection on you, Lord. Please bless Chuck Neighbors as he brings a message to us this morning, Lord, and help us to see a little bit of you through his drama presentation. Be with us now. In your name, amen.
Just when I need him most, just when I need him most, Jesus is near to comfort and cheer, just when I need him most.
You may be seated.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for being a part of our worship service today. As we usually do at this point of the service, we want to take a moment to give you an opportunity to connect with each other. Before we do that, I want to remind those of you who have been here for a while and those who are here maybe for the first time as our guests, that in your bulletins or out at the welcome desk, we have this friendship and communication card. And as the name speaks, it is designed to help you communicate with us regarding any special interests you might have, as far as particular topics you would like us, our seminars you would like us to provide. It is especially important because we're in a stage when we are starting to plan our events for next year, for 2016. And so it will be nice to get some input from you with your name, if you don't mind, of some of the events or particular subjects of seminars and special classes you would like us to provide. You also want to remind you can share your prayer requests at the bottom of that card, and we do pass them on to our prayer team. So if you would like to be a part of the prayer team, by the way, please use the card again and let us know. Just write your name and say, hey, I would like to be a part of the Crosswalk prayer team. And if you're looking for a church family, use the back of the card to give us your information, and we'll be more than glad to walk you through through the process to become a member of our church family. Now let's take a couple of minutes, look around, find someone you don't know or someone you haven't spoken to for a while, say hello, and in about 1.5, 2 minutes we'll continue with our worship service. It's very exciting. We have a special guest with us today, someone who is familiar to all of you, Chuck Neighbors. We're looking forward to his presentation as well. Let's take a moment to connect.
Here's the latest news for you from Crosswalk Fellowship. Bible Bowl, November 21. Exodus. Start studying now. Hey, we're welcoming Chuck Neighbors once again to Crosswalk Fellowship for our service today. Professional actor and storyteller Chuck Neighbors provides a repertoire of presentations that are unique and entertaining, offering both comedy and drama. His performances have been toured internationally to over 17 countries and to a wide variety of audiences, including churches, theaters, universities, military installations, and prisons. Chuck has been here several times in the past few years. His presentation today is entitled Truth Be Told, by a guy who makes stuff up. For more information or for video trailers, go to www.mastersimage.com. It's Marriage and Family Month. The sermon series for the month of September will focus on marriage, family, and relationships. Pastor Boyan will host a special marriage enrichment class at the church during the study time on September 12th, 26th, and October 3rd. The class will also be held at the campout on September 19th. North Texas Giving Day is coming. This Thursday, September 17th, is North Texas Giving Day, an online giving event that's a community-wide effort to raise awareness and funding for the more than 1,500 charitable organizations in North Texas, including NDAA. Every donation made to NDAA on North Texas Giving Day will be doubled through a one-to-one matching challenge. See your bulletin insert and posters in the foyer for more information. The Fall Learn and Live Life Groups series started this past Thursday, September 10, and will continue each Thursday from 6:30 to 7:45 p.m. here at the church. This fall, attend the second half of the study of the book of Daniel, the prophecies from past to the future, a study of Daniel chapters 7 through 12. Sunshine Band meets today and every second Saturday of the month from 2 to 3 p.m. at the Sunrise Senior Living Center. We'll return to the Plano facility this month. It's located near the corner of Parker and Preston next to the Bank of America. Plan to join the fun and fellowship as we share our talents, sing hymns, read poetry and scripture, and interact with the residents. We plan to leave the church promptly at 1:30. You can get details for all these announcements and more in your bulletin. Please plan to stay for juice and fellowship after the worship service and then join one of our study groups for kids or adults starting at 11:40 a.m. Study group locations and topics are available in your bulletin and at the greeter's desk.
As Pastor Boyan comes to introduce our special guest this morning, we invite you to sing with us again as we prepare our hearts in worship. Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Do you believe that this morning?
Amen.
All right, let's lift our voices together.
Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine. Heir of salvation, purchase of mine. Born of His Spirit, washed in His blood. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. Perfect submission, perfect delight, visions of worship, covers on my side. Angels descending, bringing them up, echoes of mercy, whispers of love. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior watching and waiting, looking above, filled with His goodness, lost in His love. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long.
Before I introduce the special guest that we have today, I wanted to remind you of a couple of important things that are going on in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Number one is this month, I want to remind you, is our Family and Relationship Month. And so we have every worship service except today. Today is more. We have it focused on relationships and building stronger families. Now this applies not only to people who are married, but also young people who are single, who also have families or are part of our church family. So there is something for everyone. We have a special Sabbath school class during our study class time, which is right after the worship service. We have a special class for married couples. So if you would like to come and attend, it is in the youth room. When you walk out of the auditorium to the right, the room at the very end, the big room, we have a DVD presentation that we watch, and then a facilitated discussion that is, we hope, will give you some tools to help you enjoy even better and happier time than you already have in your families. The other important announcement is that next week is our what? Camp out. All right, and I know not everyone is going, but if you would like to go, there is still room. You can find the information about the prices and so on in the bulletin. If you want to come just for the day, I believe it's about $60 or so. There are a lot of activities we will do. It will be focused again on families and relationships. And it's about 2 hours away from here. So if you would like more information or would still like to sign up, be sure to talk to Brian Miller. And Brian, can you wave your hand? If you don't know who Brian is, just most of you know him. Be sure that you talk to him or Leah, right back there, so they can sign you up, because it's getting very late. We've already submitted the names of those that are attending. And one more thing that is coming up, as we're focusing this month also on remembering our North Dallas Adventist Academy students. We have committed to help them with $120 towards their tuition. And throughout the month, we ask you to help us raise as much of the $15,000 we want for our tuition assistance fund that we have as a church. But this week, we have a special request that is different, and it's going to be of help that goes directly to the school. It's a great opportunity, and I wanted Leona to share with you how we all should get involved next Thursday, right?
Okay, so everyone say Thursday. Let's try that again. Everyone say Thursday. All right. And everyone say 2 is better than 1. Now, you don't really sound like you believe that. Is 2 better than 1? When it comes to money, is 2 better than 1? Amen. So we have a wonderful opportunity next Thursday. What day? Thursday is North Texas Giving Day. You should have had a little card in your bulletin. And North Texas Giving Day is a wonderful opportunity to make a difference in our community and specifically in our school. So since 2 is better than 1, we had some folks in our school who decided, yes, we think that's right. And for every $1 that's given, they're going to put $1 with it. So your $1 is now $2. Your $10 is now $20. Your $100 is now $200. And so your donation can make a huge difference in the lives of 300 students and their families. We have a mission field that we're supporting as a church. Praise the Lord for that. And I just want to report a little bit about our school briefly. How many zeros is in a million? A lot. 60. Okay, so more than 1 million, 1.2 million actually, dollars was given last May to our graduating class. $1.2 million in scholarships and in awards from not just Adventist schools, Southern Methodist University, Texas Women's University. For the past 3 years, our graduating seniors have had 100% matriculation to college enrollment. 100%. Highly unusual. Just as a point of comparison, Dallas County, our neighbor down here, their college enrollment is at about 60, and that's considered pretty good. So our dollars and our prayers are supporting a wonderful mission field just down the road. Thank you for being a part of that, and we invite you on what day next week? Thursday. Thank you so much.
If I can just be sure, so what do we do on Thursday?
Thursday, you go to the website that's on your card. And if you make a donation through that website, it will be doubled, as well as be additional prizes and bonuses that the Communities Foundation that's hosting this online giving event will add to that money. So donate online, please.
Yeah, so that donation, it's better, it needs to go directly to the website for 2 reasons. It will still be doubled, just like Leona said, but it will also enter, every donation enters us into this drawing, and there are a lot of schools participating in that. I just got something in the mail that told me about the same, another school in the area was doing it, so be sure that you make your donation online, and if you make a donation, it enters us for the possibility to win more money or other perks and bonuses and so on. So, just please take a moment and let's all do that. And I think you can do it as many times in the day as you want to. So, yeah, appreciate you very much. Thank you, Leona, for everything you do. And we are very proud. By the way, the last week of the month, we'll introduce the students that go to our Christian academies in the area as well. With you. And just one more thing, today, every second weekend of the month, every second Saturday, we have a group that goes and blesses people in a nursing home. It's called our Sunshine Band. Jerry White, if you remember, Jerry, he used to be the elder of our church, and Debbie's husband that we lost to cancer about a year ago. He started this, and we want to carry this not just because of the legacy that he left, but also because this has been a real blessing to people. And we know that a lot of our kids are participating, but we want to see more adults there as well. If you would like to go, the information is in the bulletin, or talk to Debbie White, and she can give you more information on that. So now it is time to turn it over to Chuck. Chuck Neighbors is a professional actor and storyteller. As you know, most of you have listened to him. We have had you here for quite a few times now, and it's always a pleasure to have you. Last time Chuck was here, he experienced driving on ice. Well, something that he does in his daily life, because he doesn't live in Texas, but we had to broadcast the service because there weren't many people who were able to make it. Today we're glad that we can all be here and listen to him in person. Chuck has done this ministry for over 40 years now, right? That doesn't say anything about your age. But Chuck has performed. I know that the ice didn't scare him, because he has performed on submarines, he has traveled through airplanes, helicopters, to military bases all around the world. He has blessed people with this ministry. And so today we're going to have him do a special presentation for us, one that we haven't heard, and I haven't even heard or watched. So we're excited. Thank you, Chuck. We're turning it over.
Thank you. Well, good morning. Happy Sabbath. It is great to be here and to share with you this morning. If you've seen me perform before, like when I've been here in the past, you know that I mostly do one-man shows that are theatrical in nature. But more recently, I've ventured into this area with an area of personal storytelling with a presentation that I'm going to present for you today called Truth Be Told from a Guy Who Makes Stuff Up. And as I share this, I want to let you know that what I'm sharing is a little bit outside my comfort zone, outside the box, you might say. You see, most of the time when I stand up in front of an audience, I do so as an actor, but today I'm coming more as a storyteller. Similar in many ways. As an actor, I tell stories, but the stories that I tell are usually other people's stories, or they're stories that I've made up. And I'm comfortable with that because, well, truth be told, because I have a character to hide behind. But this morning, I'm not hiding. I'm going to share with you some of my stories. And if this idea of an actor telling stories in church instead of a pastor preaching a sermon maybe seems a little odd, maybe a little bit outside your comfort zone, let me remind you that Jesus was a storyteller. In fact, we have more examples of him telling stories in the scriptures than actually preaching sermons. And you'll notice that when Jesus told his stories, the disciples would often come up to him afterwards, kind of scratching their heads and saying, "Master, I don't think I got the point of that one." You might have a similar reaction to some of my stories. But I encourage you to hang in there with me. Maybe by the time the morning is over, you will have gotten the point. But you know, I've been hearing and reading a lot about the topic of story lately. And one thought that has really captured my attention is that we are, each of us, living a story every single day of our lives. I mean, we have the power to control or at least influence the plot by the choices that we make. But sadly, many of our stories look a lot like this. I got up, I went to work, came home, I watched some TV, and I went to bed. Not a very exciting story, is it? I mean, how many of you want to see that movie? But things began to change, at least a little bit for me, when I began to apply one simple principle to my life. When faced with a challenge, that choice, that proverbial fork in the road, whatever it is, to do this, to simply ask this question: what makes a better story? Do that. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't always do that, not nearly enough. Sometimes get up, go to work, come home, watch some TV, and go to bed is about the best that I can muster. I'm addicted to my comfort zones. But I grew up in the church, literally attending twice every weekend and once in the middle of the week. And there was always an emphasis in church on telling your story. Of course, that's not the word that we used. The word that we used in church was testimony. I always found that word just a little bit intimidating. I mean, you give a testimony in a court of law. Did I need to place my hand on the Bible and be sworn in? Brother neighbors, give us your testimony. Yes, you see, the church that I grew up in was Southern Baptist. And all the men were referred to as brother. Now, that can be very endearing, except the Southern Baptist church that I grew up in was located in Michigan. You walk into a Southern Baptist church in Michigan, and strangely, everybody talks with a Southern accent. You see, all the members are displaced Southerners who'd moved to the north to take advantage of the then booming job market in the auto industry, including my family. Michigan was considered, well, a foreign mission field to Southern Baptists. And evangelism was more than saving your soul. It was about making you a good Southern Baptist as well, with a heavy emphasis on the Southern. Now, I tried to be a good Southern Baptist kid and invite my school friends to church, but I think it was the culture shock more than the gospel that frightened most of them away. But it was common during the worship services to call for testimonies. Now, originally, I think the idea was this: to simply tell your faith story, or how you became a follower of the Lord Jesus Christ. But over the years, that morphed into anything from a prayer request to a praise report to, well, for some people, just an excuse to be noticed. Now, I don't mean to be rude, but there were some people when called on to testify, I just didn't want to hear it. I mean, nobody wanted to hear about Sister Mary's acid reflux for the third time. And then there were other people when called on to testify. You knew it was going to be one long, drawn-out story with too many details, kind of like listening to the begats in the Bible. You know, you want to skip over that to get to the good part, right? I'd like to request prayer for my brother's wife's mother-in-law sister, which would be my mother. Well, she's been hitting that cough syrup again. And yes, the prayer request. In our church, that was the spiritually correct way to spread gossip in the church. But then there were other people when called on to testify, man, their stories were really good. I used to have testimony envy. Occasionally we would have a guest speaker. Man, the stories they would tell. I mean, their stories are all about sin. Not the boring little sins like I was guilty of, like cheating on tests and telling little white lies and ripping those do not remove under penalty of law tags off of pillows. No, their stories about the really big sins. To us Baptist kids, that was sex, drugs, and rock and roll, which led to the really big sin for Southern Baptists of dancing. Oh, these are the people that got to have all the fun. People who used to be high on drugs and are now high on Jesus. You have to remember that I was a teenager during Woodstock. So maybe you can appreciate the attraction these stories would have on an impressionable teen. Oh, how I wanted a testimony like that. I used to fantasize about going and living the heathen life just so I could make a better testimony. I mean, I wanted a testimony fit for a rock star. Instead, I got to be that kid that grew up in the church, mostly behaved, turned out to be that Christian actor guy. Well, there's not a lot of sex, drugs, and rock and roll in my story, although I did play drums in a rock band for a time, and you know what? It wasn't even a Christian band. Hey, but these are my stories, and I'm sticking to them. As I said, I bill myself as an actor. I've been acting, or at least acting up, all my life. Just ask my brothers. On second thought, don't. There's some of my stories I don't want you to hear. But I will admit that I do like to tell people that I'm an actor up to a point. What do you do for a living? I'm an actor. This is where he or she stares at me, waiting for that aha moment of recognition. It never comes. Have I seen you in anything? And this is where the fun ends. Probably not. In movies, on stage. This is where I would love to make stuff up. Talk about the films that I did with Robert De Niro and being on stage with Meryl Streep. My brushes with stage and film stars, I suspect, are about the same as the rest of you guys, so I tell the truth. Hey, you go to church? Huh? I do one-man stage shows that deal with the Christian faith and belief, do most of my performing in churches, Christian colleges, conferences, that sort of thing. Oh. And that usually ends the conversation right there. Yes, I'm one of those. I'm a Christian actor. Translation is, you must not be very good, or at least not good enough to make it. In fact, the Christian part about being this Christian actor guy overshadows my profession to the point that I feel I have to defend the fact that I am a real actor. I mean, I have had this conversation more times than I can count. That was really good. Thank you. No, I mean, you are really talented. Well, thank you very much. You ever think about going into acting? I know he meant it as a compliment, but still, the truth be told, I'm a working actor. I've been making my living as an actor for over 40 years. Now, in a profession that has something like a 95% unemployment rate, I figure that puts me in the top 5% of my profession. But I don't say this for the guy. I learned a long time ago that when you put the word Christian in front of anything to do with the arts, Christian actor, Christian writer, Christian singer, you better be ready to be treated like a second-class citizen by the rest of the world. Truth be told, I prefer to be known as an actor who's a Christian rather than a Christian actor. Being an actor, of course, is a profession that's often associated with being a celebrity. Being a Christian actor, not so much. Actually, I'm thankful for that. I would hate to be a celebrity. But being a Christian actor does carry a certain amount of recognition with it, at least in the local faith community, people who recognize me because I performed at their church at some time, and I don't have a clue who most of them are. You know, it seems to happen at the worst possible moments, like when I'm racing to pull into a parking space and accidentally cut somebody else off. Hey, Buster, what's the idea? Hey, aren't you that Christian actor guy? Or in the checkout at the grocery store. Hey, honey, look, it's the Christian actor guy. You'll notice that Christian actor guys have no name. There's a flash of recognition. Well, I think I recognize them from the local Adventist church. At the same time, their eyes flash on something suspicious in my grocery cart. This is for a recipe. Look, it's on my list of ingredients here. It's cooking sherry. Ah, yes, the Christian fishbowl. Everybody's watching and judging. My kids really hated it. To them, they felt like they were being monitored all the time. And whenever I would try to impress upon them that it mattered what they wore and where they were seen and what they were doing when they were seen, well, it was as if they saw right through me. Oh, you're just afraid of what people will think because we're your kids and you're that Christian actor guy. And as much as I hate to admit it, sometimes they were right. I lived way too much of my life trying to fit into that box that others have designed for me. It's probably one reason I don't have that great heathen testimony full of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Sort of hard to live that story if you're also concerned about making a good impression on the random church members that you run into at the grocery store. Now, being a Christian actor, of course, it only makes sense that some of my stories have to do with me portraying people other than myself. In fact, whenever I do engage people in conversation about what I do for a living, I find that they inevitably want to hear stories about life on the stage. Not about memorization or characterization or technique, no. No, they want to hear stories about the things that go wrong. people seem to enjoy hearing stories about the other guy's misery. I could tell you the story about the baby that crawled up on stage with me one time, forcing me to ad-lib some lines to make it look like it was supposed to happen. Well, sweetheart, did you get out of your playpen again? And where is your mommy? And then there was the lady that didn't get the memo that this was a play that was taking place during the worship service, thought my rhetorical questions were real ones, and decided to engage me in conversation in the middle of the play. Well, that's a good point. Maybe we could make an appointment and talk about that more tomorrow. And then there was the time that the battery went out on my microphone pack. The sound technician thought that he could sneak up behind me, reach into my back pocket, exchange the battery, and that no one would notice. Excuse me, have we met? But my most memorable something gone wrong story is one that I'm not really sure I want to share with you because, well, truth be told, because it's embarrassing. That's probably the one you'd like to hear, right? Well, this one happened during a performance of my adaptation of the book In His Steps, which I've shared here a few years ago. Now, how many of you read that old Christian classic, The What Would Jesus Do? Well, being a Christian classic that takes place back in the early 1900s, I did what a lot of actors do in trying to roll back the clock on stage, and I shopped for an appropriate suit of clothes at a local thrift store. Now, having done this play for over 1,000 different performances over 30 years, you can appreciate the fact that I've gone through more than one costume during the run of this play. Clothing wears out, especially clothing bought at a thrift store. And bodies change over time, as I'm sure some of you know. I wish I could get back that body I had 30 years ago. Anyway, there's a point in the story when I play this out-of-work drifter, this tramp who comes to town looking for some help. And at one point in the story, he actually interrupts the worship service at the local church in town. Now, to play this part, I put on an old coat, and I walk right down into the congregation to become this tramp. At the end of the tramp's speech, he has a heart attack. He falls to the floor, and he dies. As I'm falling to the floor, I hear, rather feel, a distinct vibration coming from the seat into my pants. This is followed by a rather profound draft on the back of my thighs, and I am suddenly aware that the entire seat into my pants has ripped out, from stem to stern. I'm having a legitimate wardrobe malfunction long before Janet Jackson coined the phrase. At moments like this, time stands still, and what's only seconds feels like an eternity. And the first thought that pops in my head is my mother's advice: always wear clean underwear in case you're in an accident. I don't think this is what she had in mind. You know, there's many ways an actor can die on stage, and at the moment I'm seeing the headline, "Actor Dies of Exposure on Stage," because at that moment I wanted to die. But then I catch my breath, and I pray for God to, quite literally, save my rear end. Now you have to realize I'm about 10 minutes into a play that goes almost an hour long. What am I going to do? I weigh my options. Well, I could just stand up and tell the audience what's happened and excuse myself to go put on another pair of pants. Sing another hymn, will you? 2, continue to play dead. Wait for the audience to think, maybe he really is dead. And they call 911, and I'll wait for the paramedics to come and carry me out. Or 3, somehow, by the grace of God, continue on with the show. Now, considering this last option, 2 phrases come ringing into my head. One is, the show must go on. Sounds good, but how? And then the voice of my high school drama teacher comes ringing. An actor never turns his back on the audience. Aha. That's it. That's what I'll do. I'll continue on with the show, and I'll never turn my back on the audience. I'm a professional. I can do this. So I began to restage the play, and I learned a new way to walk. I have to realize I'm actually down on the floor level. I have to get back up onto the platform, coming up several steps. But you realize that when you go up a mountain, you don't go straight up. You zigzag, right? So I began to zigzag my way up the steps, and I continue on with the play, never turning my back on the audience. At the end of the play comes the final test. I'm supposed to exit down the center aisle. As I'm exiting, I'm praying, please, nobody turn to watch me go. Eyes to the front, please. Now is not the time to ask the question, boxers or briefs. Well, I make it to the foyer without exposing myself to the audience, and thankfully without having to retitle this play from In His Steps to Moonstruck. You know, you can't prepare for moments like that in rehearsal. Or maybe you can. You know, I think it's one thing to play your part in life the way that you've rehearsed it. But I think it's the unexpected moments in life that test us. It was knowing my craft through study, preparation, and yes, rehearsal, that gave me the skills and confidence to respond appropriately when disaster struck. There just might be a lesson there for all of us, actor or not. In the Bible, the book of James, it says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that it is the testing of your faith that develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking in anything." Kind of gives you pause, doesn't it? Consider it joy when the bad stuff happens. Do you ever notice that stories, good stories, are all about things going wrong? Think about it. The best books, the best movies, all have something going wrong. Without the tornado, we would never discover The Wizard of Oz. Without the evil Mr. Potter, It's a Wonderful Life wouldn't be all that wonderful of a story. And even a true story like the gospel would be pretty boring without the devil. And if our hero, Jesus, didn't have to go through the crucifixion in order to give us that ultimate happy ever after ending. Yet we try to live our lives avoiding the trials, the conflicts, the bad stuff. And I know sometimes those conflicts aren't necessarily choices. Sometimes they're just things that happen, an act of God. Ever notice how we use that phrase in conjunction with bad things happening? Thousands killed in an earthquake is an act of God. Stop and help somebody stranded at the side of the road, and you're just a really nice guy. A really nice guy, perhaps, who does things motivated by God's Spirit working through him. That's an act of God. You know, I've heard it said that one of the hardest things for God to do is to work a miracle and then get credit for it. I'm sometimes quick to blame him for the bad things that happen, neglect to give him credit for the good things. But bad things do happen, don't they? The rain falls on the just and the unjust. I tell you, sometimes life feels like one of those movies where something bad happens, and the more the character tries to fix it, the worse the situation gets. Can you relate? I mean, it may start out as an act of God, but I find that some of the situations that I find myself in are situations that are caused by my own actions, an act of Chuck. And those can be embarrassing, and sometimes especially hard to treat as joy, pure joy. I've had the good fortune with my ministry to travel all over this world, but my wife, Lori, has often had to stay behind to take care of our 3 sons and to keep her day job. So when my ministry board of directors decided to donate a vacation to Mexico to us in honor of our years of service, we were delighted to be traveling together. We planned a trip for February, a good month to escape cold, wet, and sometimes frozen Oregon. I had a performance in Grants Pass, Oregon on a Sunday, and we were to leave on a Monday morning early. Now, Grants Pass, from where I live in Salem, is about a 3-hour drive. It involves going over the Sexton Mountain Pass. I drove to Grants Pass in good weather on a Saturday, did my Sunday morning performance as snow was beginning to fall. After the performance, I grabbed a bite to eat and hit the road to get me home. Sandy beaches were calling my name. About 10 minutes up the road towards the mountain pass, and the snow was getting heavier, and then traffic is beginning to slow to a stall, and then being diverted off the highway. I-5, it appears, has been closed due to not just snow, but apparently some power lines have fallen across the freeway, and with the storm conditions, it's going to be a few hours before they get the roads open. State Patrol gives us the option of waiting it out here in this rest area or turning around and going back to Grants Pass, so I decide to wait it out. We need to leave our house by 4 o'clock in the morning to make our early morning flight. Not a problem. I had the time to kill. So I pull into the rest area, and I call Lori. "Hi, honey. Hit a bit of a snag. I won't be home quite when I expected." I explained the situation. "Oh, honey, I'm sorry. Are you all right? Be careful and make sure you drink lots of water. You do have water, don't you?" I don't. Lori is a bit of a health nut, and she's constantly trying to get me to drink more water and less coffee. "No, but there's a market over here where I can pick some up, but I don't think we'll be too long." I realize that once they get the roads open, I'm going to need to have my tire chains on. So I go ahead and I chain up my vehicle. And I wait, and I wait, and I wait. Hi, honey. I know it's been 2 hours, but the roads are still closed. Oh, no, what if they don't get the road open? I'm sure they'll get the road open. Are you drinking water? I'm going to go get some just as soon as we hang up. Truth be told, I wasn't all that thirsty. And I didn't want to think about the bathroom stops that would be needed if I drank a bunch of water. But I drift over to the market, and I get some snacks and coffee and water, just in case. 2 hours turns into 4 hours. Hi, honey. Hate to tell you this, but the road's still closed. Oh, no. Why did you book that stupid show in the first place? You knew we were going on vacation. If you don't get home, suddenly it's my fault. I should have known that an act of God was going to happen and jeopardize our vacation. And this time she hangs up and didn't even ask me if I was drinking water. Finally, after 5 hours, they open the road. Chains are required, but I'm ready. But I realize that it's now getting dark. With the storm conditions, it's going to take me more than 2 hours to get home. I optimistically think maybe I'd make it in 4 hours. Little did I realize that I was looking at over 100 miles of chains-required driving. But I'm moving. Another 10 minutes up the road, and then I hear the familiar clack, 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 clack of a tire chain slapping the fender of my truck. Oh, no. This is not good. I pull over and get out to go confirm the problem. Yes, a section of the right rear tire chain's busted, slapping the fender of my vehicle. What am I going to do? Can't take the chains off. I need them for the road. I have no way to repair it. I'll just have to live with it, I guess, and accept the damage it is doing to my truck. I go to get back into the vehicle and... oh, no. You see, I left the truck running when I got to check for the damage. I have it ingrained in my brain to always lock my vehicle when I get out of it. I've just locked my keys inside a running vehicle on the side of a mountain during a snowstorm. This act of God has suddenly been hijacked by an act of Chuck. What am I going to do? Hey, I do have my cell phone and AAA. I'll call them and wait. For how long? I can't afford to wait standing outside my vehicle on the side of a mountain during a snowstorm. I have a vacation to get to. There's only one solution I can think of. I must break into my truck. Now, my Dodge Dakota had one of those extended cabs with the little vent windows over the back seat. This looks like the best option. I'm able to wedge my finger beneath the glass. This is going to work, I think. Just a bit more pressure, and boom! The window explodes, shattering into thousands of pieces that mostly go inside the truck. Not all of it went inside the truck. Some of it also flew into my face, and a few shards found their way into my exposed hands. I'm bleeding, but not mortally wounded. I get back into the truck, brush the glass off the seat, and resume the trek home. Clack, clack, clack from the broken tire chain. Cold air's coming inside the broken window. I have my fingers wrapped in Kleenex to stop the bleeding. I don't think I got all the glass off the seat. But I'm moving. I'm torn. Do I call Lori? She's already pretty upset with me. I'm not sure I want to call her and confess my stupidity at this point. I wait, drink some more water. Want to have some good news to tell her when I called. Hi, honey. Had to pull over again. Blah, blah, blah. But I'm drinking water. Well, she was thrilled to hear that at least I was moving, and I milked the bleeding hands for all that they were worth, distracting her from the possibility of still missing our flight. Finally, just after midnight, I make it home. I am exhausted and hardly in the frame of mind that I wanted to be for going on vacation. We get to the airport in time. We check in for the flight. On board the plane, I'm seated between Lori and a talker. I'm not one to talk much on airplanes. I like to read, or in this case, catch some sleep. So, you going on vacation? Yep. Great. What do you do for a living? I'm a Christian actor. It worked. I slept all the way. Joy, pure joy. You know, I remember thinking when I was a kid that when one became a Christian, bad things like this story would cease to happen. Really? Where do we get such crazy ideas? That's not truth in advertising. That's bad PR. The heroes of the faith in the Bible endured all kinds of conflicts and trials, and some even death for what they believed. I've since learned that the heroes of the faith in my own personal life are those same kinds of people. Show me a person of deep conviction who truly lives their faith, and I'll show you somebody who's probably walked through some pretty deep valleys in life. Being a Christian doesn't protect us from the bad stuff, but it does give us the faith, the hope, and the encouragement to persevere, and sometimes even with joy. Amen. Pure joy. I love my family. I have 3 sons, Jonathan, Ryan, and Liam, 1 daughter-in-law, Mallory, and as of just a little over a month ago, 1 granddaughter, Lucy. Ryan, our middle son, was our miracle baby. He was born premature, and when he was just 6 weeks old, we found ourselves in a bit of a tough place with him. Now, we still don't know to this day what the illness is that he caught, but he developed what appeared to be cold symptoms. Lori took him to the doctor and had one of those experiences that maybe some of you have had, that while you're with the doctor, the child appears to be just fine. And the doctor looks at you like you're some paranoid, overreactive nutcase who doesn't know anything about raising kids. Lori brought Ryan home, but we both noticed that something wasn't right with him. He would have these moments when he was sleeping when he would stop breathing. Sleep apnea. It was mild at first, but over the next 24 hours, these spells became more frequent. And then he had a couple of episodes where it was actually hard to wake him up out of these spells. We were frightened. We phoned the doctor and said that we were taking him into the emergency room. We were terrified as we drove to the hospital, desperately trying to keep our son awake and alive. We honestly thought that he had died on the way to the hospital. Once we get him into the emergency room, wouldn't you know it, he's acting just fine. Just the way you would expect a 6-week-old baby to act. And now the doctor's convinced that not only is mom a nutcase, it looks like maybe dad is too. The doctor's holding and sleeping Ryan. He's about to send us home when it happens again. Ryan stops breathing. This time the doctor's able to see firsthand that we are not nuts. And Ryan's not responding. The doctor's not able to get him to breathe again on his own. We're ushered out of the room as the doctor and nursing staff rush into action. When we next see our little baby, he is strapped to a table with tubes running everywhere and a machine breathing for him. He would stay that way for several days as numerous tests were conducted to try to figure out what was wrong with our little baby. We were in the critical care ward of Emmanuel Children's Hospital in Portland, Oregon. Over the next several days, as we kept vigil, we got to meet and know several other people in this most terrifying place. We had no immediate family in the area, but our church became our family, and they were a great support, especially our pastor and his wife. Children died while we were in this place. Children we'd seen and met. We saw parents grieving. During a moment when Ryan was stable, Lori remarked to our pastor, "Well, thank God Ryan's not as bad off as some of these other children here." Sometimes you learn from your story when it's all over. Sometimes, if you're fortunate, you can learn from your story while it's happening. This was one of those times. Our pastor looked us both in the eyes and said, "What if he were? Huh? What if Ryan were as bad off, or even worse than some of these other children here? I'm not trying to be morose, but I want you to be prepared. What if Ryan dies?" Well, I hear you thanking God that Ryan's not as bad off as some of these other children, but Ryan's not out of the woods yet. And I'm concerned about what you'll think about God if it gets worse. If Ryan were to die, would you still be all right with God? It was a soul-penetrating question. Bad things do happen. The rain falls on the just and the unjust. Just because we pray, we have faith, we believe, doesn't mean that Ryan's going to pull out of this unscathed or even alive. Our pastor was right to ask us that question. We needed to confront the possibility of death. I think it was a little easier for me to get there than for Lori. I had more experience with the death of family and friends during my life. Lori, at this point in her story, had never really experienced the death of somebody she was truly close to. It gave us an opportunity to reconcile our faith in God. We needed to come to a place in our faith that would persevere, regardless of the outcome. Fortunately, Ryan's condition did improve. As a precaution, we were sent home with him attached to a contraption known as an apnea monitor. If he stopped breathing for more than a few seconds, an alarm would sound. Now, Ryan never set off the alarm for legitimate reasons. But every time he'd fill his diaper, the alarm would sound. Having your baby wake you at 3 o'clock in the morning just because they want their diaper changed? Give me a break. Our other two sons got no such luxury. We were so very glad the day the poop alarm was returned to sender. You ever notice that when bad things happen, we have a tendency to want to blame somebody? Blame God, blame the devil, blame another person. Ryan got sick, almost died. Who to blame? Well, that's not so clear. You know, sometimes afflicting blame is appropriate. I mean, you get in an accident caused by a drunk driver, it only seems natural to blame the drunk driver. But sometimes I think we can be quick to shoulder blame that doesn't belong to us. My sister, Loretta, was the only girl in our family. I had 2 older brothers, but I was closest to Loretta. We would play together, and at this point in my life, Loretta, she was probably not only my sister, but probably my best friend as well. The actor in me was very much alive at age 10, and Loretta at age 5 was my co-star. She would play cowboys and Indians with me, and I would return the favor and play house with her. So one day in October of 1965, we were playing in the backyard with some of my cousins. Now, in addition to being John Wayne and Cowboys and Indians, I also like the old Tarzan and Hercules movies. And on this particular day, we were playing Hercules. Now, we had one of these punching bags in our backyard, which consisted of a metal stand with a sturdy rod spring coming out of it with the bag on top, only the bag was missing. So what was left was this little wooden block on top of this sturdy rod spring. I, being Hercules, never mind at the age of 10 I had the physique of a toothpick, was demonstrating my superhuman strength by standing on that metal stand and then bending that rod all the way down to the ground with my face directly over the wooden block. Remember, this is the kid who'd one day grow up to lock his keys inside a running vehicle on the side of a mountain during a snowstorm. With my face directly over that block, that rod slipped out of my hand, and bam, that block hit me right in my left eye. My eye was literally bulging out of my head as I ran screaming to find my mother. Chucky, what happened? They rushed me to the hospital. In the emergency room, the nurse asked, what happened to you? Have a seat, the doctor will be right out. What happened to you, young man? Fortunately, my mom was able to translate. The doctor felt the eye could be saved, but I would need to stay in the hospital for several days and be very still with both eyes bandaged. You see, they were afraid that the good eye might overcompensate for the bad eye, so it was best to bandage both during the healing process. I got to experience what it was like to be blind for a week, although I was caught cheating several times, lifting the corner of the bandage of the good eye to explore my surroundings. When you're 10 years old, stuck in a hospital and told to be still, give me a break. I have to say that story became very important to me during that time. And I loved having my mom visit, and she would read to me the adventures of Pippi Longstocking. I also scored my very first transistor radio, complete with earphone, the iPod of the 60s. While I was in the hospital that first night, my dad decided to join me as a patient. He had a severe attack of diverticulitis, a condition that can cause an infection and, in the worst case scenario, an obstruction in the bowel. My dad had the worst case. He wound up in the hospital requiring surgery to move several feet of his intestines. My poor mom would spend her time divided between her son on one floor of the hospital and her husband on the other. Can you imagine her life during that time? After about a week in the hospital, we were sent home. I was sent home, and my dad followed about a week later. In the 60s, they tended to keep you in the hospital a little bit longer than they do these days. The eye was going to make it. My dad would be all right if he watched his diet and avoided certain foods. Life, it seemed, was returning to normal. Have you ever heard that adage that bad things happen in groups of 3? I don't know where that comes from or how scientific that is. I mean, where do you start the count? What might be your number one might be somebody else's number three. But in any case, the rule of threes seemed to apply to us that October. Loretta was in kindergarten, and I was in 5th grade. We lived close enough to our elementary school to be walkers, so I would walk to school in the morning. Loretta would be taken to school at midday. Then we would meet up after school and walk home together. This was October, we started school in September, the pattern was set. Maybe it was because of the pattern that gave Loretta the confidence. Maybe it was the excitement of just wanting to see her dad who'd just gotten home from the hospital the day before. But for whatever reason, on that fateful day, Loretta decided not to wait for me, but to walk home instead with some girls that lived across the street from us. She went into their house to use the restroom and then charged out of the house to run across the street to our house. I was walking down the street when I saw the lights of the police car in front of our house. Somebody was lying in a mud puddle. Lots of people crowded around. As I got closer, my mom came charging out of the house and intercepted me. "Is that your sister?" I don't know. "Don't stop. Go home." Loretta clung to life for a short time. But in 24 hours, she was gone. This was the 60s. Racial tensions in Michigan were at their height. The driver of the vehicle that hit my sister was an African American. Would have been convenient and easy to blame him. But truth be told, Loretta literally darted out in front of the vehicle. The driver had no warning. Who to blame? Was this God's fault? Do we blame him? Was it Loretta's fault? She was just a child, hardly responsible for her actions. It was my parents' fault. Maybe they could have taught their children better how to cross the street, you know. No, I knew who to blame. Me. It was my fault. It was an act of Chuck. You see, I knew if I'd only been out in front of that school just a few seconds earlier, I would have been there to walk my sister home. If I'd been there, she would have crossed the street safely. This terrible accident never would have happened. I knew that I was responsible for the death of my sister. Nobody knew I was shouldering this blame. I kept it to myself, suffering not only the grief of her death, but the idea that I was responsible for it. My parents and my brothers, they were going through their own grief. I'm sure they had no idea that I was shouldering this burden as well. But you know, I believe that God sent me an angel in the form of my 5th grade teacher, Frida MacArthur. Frida was not only my teacher, but she also went to my church. And she had a terrific Southern accent. Truth be told, I had a little bit of a crush on her. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" "Well, why don't you tell me about it, honey?" Melt. It was Frida who figured out what was going on with me. She got me to talk about it, brought it to the attention of my parents, and over time, they were able to help me see that I was not responsible for this terrible accident. You know, we want our stories to have happy endings, don't we? But that can't always be the case. I know in those dramatic testimonies I would hear as a kid, this is where the happily ever after ending would start. But I don't have a happily ever after ending to this story. But I do know that good has come from it. My mom was able to share this story with countless people who were amazed that she harbored no bitterness against the driver of the vehicle. And my parents' faith grew stronger, not weaker, during this crisis. And I learned that blaming yourself for things that go wrong can get in the way of God's grace sometimes. Don't get me wrong, guilt has a place in our life. It can be a powerful force for change. It can drive us to our knees. But false guilt is counterproductive, wastes time, and causes us to live a story that we don't deserve. You know, all of us, all you guys have stories. But you know, most of us don't spend enough time reliving them, retelling them, and learning from them. But, you know, our stories shape us. They give meaning to our lives. You think about it. You get older, you look back on your life, it's your stories, not your stuff. It's the relationships you've built, many of them right here in this family we call the church, that will hold true value. I mean, you only have to imagine your life without your stories to realize just how important they are. I am so thankful that in my story, I did not have to go to the depths and to the extremes that some people have gone in order to discover God's grace. So don't get me wrong. Those dramatic stories are great and probably help countless people discover the life-changing power of the gospel of Jesus Christ. But this idea of what makes a better story do that doesn't mean that we need to make bad choices. Oh, sure, living the life of a heathen might make a great story, but a better story involves making good choices. And while my story may seem rather tame compared to some, maybe some in this room right now, really my sins are no less than anybody else's. My need for forgiveness no less than anyone's. You know, in God we have the great equalizer, that we are all sinners. But when we trust in Jesus, we're all forgiven. So this idea of giving your testimony, telling your story, need not be dramatic, although it may be. But you know, your story just might be the thing that can inspire, challenge, and encourage other people. All those trials, those conflicts, those bad things are serving to make you mature and complete, as James says, not lacking in anything. Paul says it like this: therefore, since we have been justified through faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have gained access by faith into this grace which we now stand. And we rejoice in the hope of the glory of God. Not only so, but we also rejoice in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope. And hope does not disappoint us, because God has poured out his love into our hearts by the Holy Spirit whom he has given us. Amen. Perseverance, character, hope, all things that can be found right there in the center of your story. It might be as simple as, I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. I, Chuck Neighbors, am just a guy. A guy who locks his keys inside a running vehicle on the side of a mountain during a snowstorm, but I know that I have a God who's bringing me home. I'm that Christian actor guy who sometimes forgets that the glory is his, not mine. I'm that guy that carried around the guilt of my sister's death, which was not my fault, as well as the guilt of countless sins that are my fault. But I know that by God's grace, I'm forgiven. Oh, I may still get knocked in the head with my careless actions. I'll probably worry over my sick children and my sick grandchildren. Hey, I might even rip my pants in public again sometime. But I know that I have a God who forgives my sins, my faults, my fears, my foolishness, who makes a way for me to stand blameless before my God who loves me so much. Grace. Grace is amazing, isn't it? Hey, that's my story. What's yours?
Thank you, Chuck. As always, you not only are a good storyteller, but you have really, really important life challenges that you bring to us. I think many of us can relate to some of the experiences that you shared, and I hope that this is a time when God can speak to your heart and spoke to your heart. Chuck will be available after church outside if you would like to talk to him on any topic. But what we would like to do is, Chuck does this actually pretty much as a free will ministry, but he's supported through donations. And every time we have him here, we ask anyone who feels that can and would like to help out with his ministry, so he can continue to go around and bless people with the message that he carries. So I'm going to ask in a minute the ushers to come and collect a special offering for Chuck. We're going to give you a minute to just think of what you can do. You can also go outside by his table, and there are ways that he can tell you can donate directly to his ministry online as well. But Chuck, before we go, I just want to say one more time, I hope that you continue to bless people through what you do. There are very few people who can share stories as effectively as you, but also do it in a way that touches the heart. And I just want to tell you, you've touched mine, and I hope that my story one day could be told the way you tell yours. Chuck also has another ministry that he is involved in that really is done not for him, as he said, but it is done for other people. And the second part of our 2015 year has a different theme than the one we started with, right? We began with the theme in, and the second part of the year we have switched to out, doing things, sharing the blessings that God has shared with us with the people around us. And so as part of this out ministry, I think we can join into the mission that you have adopted. Chuck is a part of an organization, Food for Hunger, Food for Hunger, that blesses kids. You can go to his table and you can talk to him of how you can adopt a kid and actually make a difference in not only in their life, but also in the life of the community that they live in. Every time we're blessed to take part and sponsor a few of the kids that your ministry is reaching out to. So we're going to see a short video, and then I'm going to let him tell you a little bit more about that ministry. During the video, we'll also take that special offering for Chuck's ministry. It's different than the support you can give later on to Food for Hunger.
The Dominican Republic is one of those countries it's a tourist destination for a lot of Americans. And you look at pictures and you see beautiful beaches and lush areas, and it's true. You come here, there is so much beauty, and there's beauty in the architecture of the old city. But then you travel off of the beaten path where the people actually live, and the contrast is startling. To be a parent and to know that was the condition that I was trying to raise my own children in. Yeah, one of the communities that we visited, we drove in as far as we could drive in our vehicle, and then we had to walk, and you get up to the top of the hill and here's a little community, and they don't have clean water. To get water they have to walk that same hill we just came. We take that for granted. We drink water out of the tap and bottled water and everything, water everywhere. In a lot of these communities, that's something that is a precious commodity that they don't have. And Food for the Hungry is providing ways for them to have clean water on a daily basis. And her name is Crystal. What we met was a gorgeous little child. I was a little nervous, a little apprehensive. This is our first time to meet, but just fell in love with her in just the few minutes that we had together to get to know her a little bit, know a little bit about her family. I am now a part of this child's life, and there's a relationship there now. And I'm looking forward to communicating with her and writing to her and just being a part of her life. When you sponsor a child like Crystal, you're helping not only that child, but you're helping that child's family and the entire community where that child lives, with the hope that they can totally transform that community so that sponsorship is no longer even needed. It's just such a rewarding thing to be a part of a process like that that is changing lives on that level. It was wonderful to meet Crystal and to see how she lives and to be reminded again just how blessed we are in this country when you see the kind of poverty where Crystal lives. We take such things for granted. One of the things that the video didn't say, but I want to make sure you understand, is that Food for the Hungry is definitely a Christian ministry, and they purpose that the children that are sponsored also have an opportunity to respond to the gospel. And indeed, in the projects that we visited while we were there, 100% of the kids were involved in classes where they're learning about the Bible, they're learning about Jesus, and having that opportunity to respond. And one thing that really impacted me on this particular trip was actually meeting Carlos, who was the guy that worked with Food for the Hungry, was our translator. He was in some of the video there. And he shared his testimony with us. And he's a child, when he was a child, he was a Food for the Hungry child. He was a sponsored child. He's gone on to get a full college education and now is coming back, working in the exact community where he grew up. And he shared that it was through his sponsor's influence that he came to faith in Christ. His sponsor sent him a Bible translated his own language, and through the letters that followed, he gave his life to the Lord. And so I want you to know that when you sponsor a child, it's not just about food for the hungry, that is reflected in the title, but it's so much more than that. And you can have a pivotal part in that child's growth and development as well. So I encourage you to seriously consider doing this. On the table in the back are some pictures of children who need sponsors. Here's a boy whose name is Bonthi, who is from Cambodia. He is 11 years old, and his birthday is coming right up, September 16th this week. He needs a sponsor. When you sponsor him, you're going to be helping with the things we talked about in the video: food, clothing, water, healthcare, education. It costs $35 a month to sponsor a child with Food for the Hungry. You break that down, that's just a little over $1 a day, something within reach for many of us, I think. And please understand, I'm not standing up here trying to give anybody a guilt trip. That's not what this is about. But if you're having one, take it to the table out there. Be very happy to help you do something about it. Seriously, it can change the life of one of these kids. The most cost-effective way to do that, $35, is an auto pay through a credit or debit card or an automatic withdrawal from your checking account. When you do the auto pay, it actually saves them money. It means more of your dollar gets to where it's needed in helping these children in these communities. I'll just close with another thought. You know, the Bible tells us that the poor will be with us always. I have no doubt about that. But knowing that doesn't let us off the hook, does it? The Bible reminds us over and over and over again to remember the poor. And I simply ask you, how are you personally doing it? I'll tell you that I didn't do a very good job of it. I might put money in the offering plate for a special appeal, maybe give some money to the Salvation Army at Christmas time, but I didn't consistently, on an ongoing basis, remember the poor. Sponsorship's given me a way to do that. My wife and I sponsor 5 kids. I've had a chance to meet 3 of those kids firsthand to see how their lives are changed. But funny things happen along the way. God's done a work in my heart. He's made a better story, not only for the children that we sponsor, but for me as well. I have a sneaking suspicion he'll do that for you as well. So prayerfully consider sponsoring one of these kids today. Thank you so much for letting me share that.
Won't you please stand with us as we sing our final song today?
Sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Dear God, we're so thankful that we can be reminded that, truth be told, there is no one else like you, who can lift us up from the times of discouragement, who can take away the guilt that Satan tries to put in our hearts, sometimes blaming us for things that really were not our fault or we could not prevent, and yet somehow managing to blame you. But God, we want to praise you that you have reached out, especially through Chuck today, to each one of our hearts and called us to recognize you for who you are, the only source of goodness, hope, and faith for life. Help us to hold on to you, to leave our burdens into your hands, and to walk forward sharing your love and your light with the world around us. Bless every person that is here, Jesus. Be with us and help us walk forward, living our lives the way you would if you would walk in our shoes today throughout this coming week until we meet again. And thank you for everything. Amen. You may be seated.